Hello adventurers and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be cooking with our RoadPro slow cooker. So our little crock pot, we're going to try out something. I'm going to try to make a beef stew today. Now, why am I doing this in my base camp kitchen as opposed to on the road? Well, I'm trying out my gear before I take it out on the road to make sure that everything works fine, and then also to kind of see how much power this thing's going to take when I'm actually cooking. I thought a beef stew would be something that would be good because it's going to have a lot of different textural elements. So I'm going to be putting like carrots and potatoes and onion and some beef in there, and then kind of cooking it down and see how long that it takes. Now, I know how long it takes in my larger slow cooker. I can do it in about 2.5 to 3 hours in my larger slow cooker on like a medium setting. Now, this one does not have a temperature control, so it's all just one thing. So we're going to see how it goes. Also, I'm going to cook a small enough portion that I can have this. This isn't going to be something that would be like a numerous portion situation, but let's get to cooking. Okay, so now that we have the outer skin peeled, I'm just going to cut this into kind of like little chunks, and then I'm going to cut it again. I want some chunkier pieces because those take a little bit longer to cook, just because, again, I am testing to see how well this cooks. At the same time, I don't want anything too chunky because then I'm just going to end up with a mouthful of onion. So this should work right here, just pieces like this. And I'm going to throw them in the pot. In they go. I'm just going to line the bottom. And don't worry, we'll mix everything up in just a little bit. Now it's time to cut up our potatoes, and I am going to quarter these. Actually, I might half them and then quarter them. I think this would be a better size chunk. So I'm going to do small potatoes, 4 of them. And I really like these smaller potatoes in van life anyway because they're easier to cook in all of my different cooking devices. But also I like that they each have a little bit of a different flavor to them. And so these are really good for van life. And I just find these pretty much at every grocery store that I go to. They're super easy to deal with. And yeah, they just add a lot to any recipe that I make. So 4 of these, and as I go, I'm just putting them directly into the cooker. So we'll be right back. Okay, with 1 onion and 4 small potatoes, we're a little bit under halfway full. So let's go get our carrots. Going to sprinkle in a little bit under, well, actually a whole handful will work. And then we'll just start to kind of move these things around with our hands. Of course, my hands are clean, so this is a good amount. Now we put in the beef. Now I made a little bit of a mistake. I actually froze my meat because I didn't know when I was going to be cooking this. And because of that, I just froze it in the container. It is fine. It just looks a little weird because I was defrosting it. So I'm going to put a few pieces of meat in here, and then I'm going to cook off the rest of this for another meal. Not here on the channel, but just, one for the house. Our next step is just a little bit of broth. You can use beef broth or chicken broth. I have this one, and so we're going to be using chicken broth with reduced sodium today. And we're just going to pour some of this in to make it nice and juicy. That's going to make the potatoes cook better. That's going to make the meat really soak in the seasoning. And we're just going to put all the seasoning on top so it can kind of like just marinate down in there. I usually like to cover my meat with the juice because I like a nice juicy stew. Now at this point I could put tomato paste, tomato sauce, or chunky tomatoes in there. I don't know that I want to do that yet. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ahead and put my seasoning in and then kind of make that judgment call. A little Tony's, a little of this garlic sriracha, which I put on so many things. It is just so good. A little bit of parsley. And I know this sounds weird, but go with me on this. Trader Joe's ketchup flavored sprinkle is delicious. And this actually is a tomato base. So instead of using a tomato paste or sauce, I'm going to use a little bit of this because that'll give it that tomatoey flavor. But with the other seasonings that I have, it's not going to make it taste like ketchup. Okay, now we're just going to kind of push all of this down. And as you can see, that's going to have a good coloration to it. And as it cooks, then we'll be able to add to it if we need to as we taste it. But for now, it is time to clean up our space and start to cook. Now, realistically, you can put whatever you want to in your stew. There's a lot of different variations of stew. This is just something that works for a one-pot meal for me. I ended up using about almost half of the meat that was in that one container. So not quite a whole container will fit in this with the other things. If I was just cooking the meat, the whole thing would have fit. But because I'm making stew for one, it was worth it to kind of scatter things around and do a few things. So as I'm cleaning up here, kind of be thinking, what would you put in your stew, and leave it in the comments below. But I'm gonna finish this and then we'll talk about how long this thing needs to cook. Okay, it's time to put the lid on, and now we're going to plug it in. I'm going to be using this power station again. This is part of my testing process, and this plug is so snug, it almost requires me to hold the power station and then push it in. But now that we're going, we can turn it on. I'm starting off with this power station at 81%, and it's already turned on. I went ahead and flipped the switch before I plugged it in. It's currently pulling 81 watts, and it's gonna start cooking. As for a reference, it's not actually 10:44. My power went off last night, and this is what it is. So it's 10:44 according to this. You know, this is the main reason why I wanted to do this here at base camp, because things like this take time, and knowing how much time it's gonna take and also how many watts it's gonna take is very important. So remembering, 81% is where we're starting off this battery. So this is as much a test of the battery as it is the actual RoadPro today. And this is just a super simple recipe that you can adapt and make your own. Another thing that I did notice is this little container right here, you can use the smaller crock pot bags on. So if you prefer to use that for an easier cleanup, you definitely can. I only had the huge ones today. Otherwise, I probably would have used one, because cleanup is never fun. So that's just a tip that we might try for the next thing that we cook. Again, one last look. It says it could run for 15 hours at the amount that it's pulling, and it's pretty consistent, 81, 82 watts. So yeah, this is not going to be a problem to cook a beef stew with this particular power station. Also, something to note, this power station is a larger power station, but because it pulls about 81 to 82 watts, you could use a slightly smaller power station. So in the next demo, I might pull something out that's a bit smaller, just to kind of show you guys how it cooks and how long it cooks and how much it depletes the battery using different kinds of power stations. We all have different power needs, so we all have different ways of satisfying that. Some of us have power stations that are portable. Some of us have like plug and play where we're shore power. Some of us have just tiny power stations. So I want to make sure that you know what will and will not work. So I think this video is going to be that for us all. So check back with you guys in just a little bit. Okay, it's been about an hour. We're down to 76%, so from 81 to 76. As you can see, we're having a nice steaminess going on inside, and I can start to smell this. Now let's look inside. It's cooking. It's definitely cooking. It's gonna be slow, but it is cooking. So an hour in, and it's super hot to the touch. So, so far so good. And now, ooh, oh yeah, I think it's time for us to stir. Now I'm just using a regular spoon to stir, and the meat is cooked very nicely. It's really starting to tender up a little bit. The potatoes, let's see, you can see that outer rim versus the inner, so it's cooking very well. And everything is doing pretty well so far. It's not quite done yet, but I kind of assumed that it wouldn't be. My onions are starting to go a little bit more translucent, and so the thicker ones are a little bit slower, but we kind of expected that. So I'm gonna really stir this good and then put the top back on. Now I've already begun to kind of move about for my day and everything, and so I can smell this every time that I come back into base camp, and it smells so good. So I'm just very excited that this is gonna be my dinner for tonight. All in all, I'm kind of surprised because I didn't know how long this was gonna take. I did watch a couple of other videos of people who use them, and they said typically they'll put it on in the morning and by evening it is done and perfect and amazing. And so since there's no temperature control where you can go to low or high, I think this is doing pretty much what I thought it would. It's right on track for the size and the amount that I would get if I were cooking on like a low setting on a bigger crock pot. And it's only pulling those like 80 some odd watts. So not too bad, but I'm gonna check in with it in a little while again and just kind of see how close that we're getting. Okay, new update, 54%, and I went ahead and put my cutting board back in its place so that I could put the lid down here. Ooh, whenever I open that up, it smells so good, guys. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is cooking very nicely. I think I'm gonna try to see how the potatoes are doing because the potatoes Well, I can't do it with one hand. Give me a second. I just used another spoon to kind of cut into the potato, and they're definitely softening. And I think with a little bit more time, this is going to be very, very nice. Definitely super aromatic, and it's cooking away nice and consistently. So again, this is an all-day kind of thing. So with it being an all-day kind of thing, I kind of knew going into it that it was going to be a little bit of a longer process because this is a slow cooker and it's a very low watt slow cooker. So I'm just going to keep it covered for a little bit longer, and then we'll get to a place where we can taste test it and see if it needs any more seasoning. But it looks like it's pretty good. Okay guys, it is finished and I'm super excited. I left it in for a bit longer, and it is now officially time for my dinner. And just to kind of give you an idea of how long I left it in there, it got down to 36%. I probably didn't need it in there that long, but I did leave it in for a considerable amount of time just because I wasn't ready to eat. So realistically, I probably could have pulled it out about an hour ago. The nice thing is, because it's a low power, it wasn't like a super draw, and I still have enough power where I could get through a night if I was in my van, so that's awesome. And considering I didn't start off with this at full charge, I'm pretty pleased. This was an all-day thing, and you know, it smells delightful. So now it's time for me to try it out. So let's grab a bowl. Actually, rather than a bowl, let's just dig right in, because this is a serving helping for me, so I'm not gonna be sharing this with anybody. Ooh, it looks delightful. Let's get a little closer. This is so good. You can see like the little potatoes in there, the carrots, the onions went to this nice translucence. This is gonna be perfect for my dinner tonight. But let's just taste test. Just spicy enough. The potatoes are just like, ooh, they just kind of melt. The carrots, I have a little bit of snap to them left, but not much. The meat had a nice chewy bit, but it wasn't so chewy and tough, because sometimes, you know, meat can go that way. But because of the seasoning that we put in here, it really tenderized it. So, so good. Definitely happy with this. And I could literally throw this in and drive, and by the time that I take one of those long drives like across West Texas, this would be ready to go. So that is awesome. And I still have battery left, so that's even better. Now, with this particular stew, because it does have those more hearty ingredients, maybe on a smaller power station that wouldn't work for something that has to stay on quite as long as this, but on a larger power station, we're good to go. But I think I'm gonna try another recipe, not tonight, but maybe tomorrow, with a different kind of power station to see how it goes, and some different ingredients. Maybe we'll even make a dessert. Ooh, that could be good. Yeah, I think we're gonna make a dessert.